Good morning, campers, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 0.25 Hard Mode. This time we have a special kind of a lost episode for you. This was my submission to HOC Gaming's Flying Blind series, which he's canceled. It didn't work out quite like he planned, but I did this video intending for it to be commentated over by him. So you don't get to see the rocket being built because I want it to be a bit of a surprise what it's going to be doing. So the name of the mission is the High Orbit Catcher mission, the HOC mission, which I thought was clever, probably isn't, but you know. And you can see we're checking on asteroids. So the eagle-eyed among you might have already seen episode 8 of the series. I'm going to be numbering this one 7.5 because that's where it takes place in the timeline, effectively. So we've already picked out an appropriate asteroid that will meet the requirements for our Class D asteroid intercept mission we accepted on an earlier episode. That's what we're attempting to do here. Those of you who pay attention will have noticed in episode 8 that that is no longer present. So you can probably guess what's going to happen through the course of this episode. But anywho, fast forwarding into the morning because, you know, night launches don't look quite as interesting as early morning launches. And we're fast forwarding through the launch, nothing too spectacular here. Pretty easy launch vehicle, just 4 solid rocket boosters, a liquid fueled core with 4 LV-45 engines. I don't think they're the ones with thrust vectoring since I have aerodynamic control fins on there. Jettison the boosters. I had a little accident with those in the test flight, and that's why you saw the extra Septicon on top. Continuing to burn. And as you can see, we're not going into a standard orbit here. We have to push over almost due west, in fact. Actually going to be going a little bit north of west, trying to intercept a good angle to get this asteroid at. It's orbiting retrograde, so we're going to need a little bit of extra delta V to actually get into orbit. Luckily, we have a nuclear engine for the upper stage of this, so we'll have plenty of delta V to work with as long as we have plenty of time, which is why I went into a very steep ascent. I wanted to make sure we had as much time as possible above 70,000 meters in order to do our orbit injection burn. Tried to minimize cuts as much as possible because I was expecting HOC to be commenting over this and wanted him to see as much of the mission as possible. But there are going to be some cuts later in the episode. I'm leaving it intact as what I sent to him for that video series. So you can see we've separated the fairings. This is why I installed the fairings, just so I could hide the payload until it got into orbit and up the intrigue on the video, so to speak. But unfolding the solar panels now. I was going to leave it covered all the way until we got there, but I figured seeing me tracking the asteroid and launching into this weird orbit, you'd be able to tell pretty easily what the mission was. Of course, still plenty of surprise to come. A lot of the instruments on this spacecraft are not stuff that we've used before, so they're brand new stuff that we got from the D-Magic Science mod that I've personally never actually used on a mission before this one. So very, very curious to see what we're going to wind up getting when we get this thing out to the asteroid. Here's our orbital insertion burn. The whole mission, give or take, took about an hour worth of game time, so there's going to be we got it cut down to about 35 minutes, which is not bad considering there's hardly any actual jump cuts. So mostly the time we gain is from things like this where we fast forward the burn. Because of course no one actually wants to sit through an entire burn on a nuclear engine. And of course the next stage of the spacecraft has an ion engine, which takes even longer, so you can probably imagine there's going to be some more fast forwarding coming up. Anyway, you can see our inclination's not perfect, so we're going to have to adjust that. But first we are going to buy ourselves some extra effort. Luckily we've got our we have our descending node pretty much spot on towards the closest approach of the asteroid. It's not as close as I would like, but it's close enough. So we're going to raise our own apoapsis out to about where the asteroid's periapsis is. And it's going to be pretty close to the it's going to be pretty close to our descending node, so that'll let us do a plane correction without spending quite as much fuel. First things first, though, we do need to boost our orbit out there. That maneuver is going to be coming up in a very short amount of time. We're not going to wait an entire orbit for this, I don't think. I'm commenting over this with the video playing in a preview window, so I don't have quite the resolution that you're going to see. Ah, there we go. Yeah, it looks like we're just going to go straight into the burn here. I can see the numbers counting down now. It's been a week or so since I recorded this, now that I'm doing the voiceover myself, so cut me a little bit of slack there. Here we are, going into the burn, accelerating through it with our post-effect time acceleration, since I did not manage to do that in the actual video. Since we're in orbit, everything's pretty well put together. We could have just as easily done our physical time acceleration during this burn, but I didn't think of that. It's relatively safe to use once you're in orbit, though you want to be very gentle with putting any control inputs while you're doing physical time acceleration, because you can really tear your ship apart quick. Alright, so now we're adding a maneuver to correct our inclination to intercept the asteroid. So this is going to serve as a decent tutorial on how to get to an asteroid as well, since I did promise that the first time we do anything in this series, I'm going to try and leave as much in as possible so you can see how I did it. So you want to perform this this angle correction maneuver as far away from Kerbin as you can. It saves you, the farther out you do it, the more delta V you save. Or, yeah, the less delta V you spend to do the plane correction. It saves fuel, let me put it that way. Quite proud of how this rocket turned out. There's the thumbnail. Got some science experiments stowed in universal storage parts up near the top of the craft. Of course, you can see the way we're going to be attaching to the asteroid, we are going to leave a docking port on it, just in case we decide to return to this asteroid in the future and do some other interesting things with it. We might pull it back into Kerbin orbit in the future at some point. So we're going to be sticking the claw in the asteroid and just leaving it there. Also got plenty of RCS controls on the science vehicle toward the front. Of course, we weren't expecting to get the entire thing out this far. I had intended to ditch the nuclear stage well before I actually intercepted the asteroid, which is why there's an ion engine on the science craft itself. So now that we've corrected our inclination, we just have to get ourselves an intercept. So we're going to, once we pass back behind Kerbin again, we're going to push our apoapsis out to meet the asteroid's orbit. And, yep, there we go. Not sure what I was doing there. So we're going to time this maneuver to get us one orbit away from the asteroid actually coming in. So then we're going to try and adjust things. We're going to see if we can't go ahead and get ourselves an intercept directly out of this maneuver. So bringing the maneuver forward a little bit and adjusting things further. Alright, so we're going to go with that maneuver, and then we'll adjust it again afterwards, trying to bring the encounter a little bit closer together. Now we're trying to get the intercept on our own apoapsis to save us a little bit of trouble there. Trying to get our maneuver node worked out. Make sure that we're going to be able to perform the intercept maneuver. Roughly, we expect we're going to wind up making our orbit equal that of the asteroids, except of course we're going to be waiting until the asteroid is considerably closer before we do that. So there's going to be a couple of orbits to wait. Luckily, we have Kerbal alarm clock that lets us just fast forward straight to these events. And there's our next burn. Alright, so that's brought us there. So now we just need to effectively slow our orbit down so that we get an intercept with the asteroid. And that's going to be it right there. And by slowing our orbit down, of course, I mean making it wider, which means that it takes us longer to do one complete orbit, and that will put us on a course to intercept the asteroid on the next pass. So we're going to fast forward up to this maneuver, another 300 or so meters per second it looks like. Still just under half of our fuel left, looks like maybe maybe about 3/8 of a tank of fuel there. So getting quite a lot more mileage out of this nuclear stage than I expected. The 800 gallon, or I don't know what the unit is, but the 800 tank is, combined with one nuclear engine, tends to be enough to do quite a lot when you've got a very small payload. It's often what I use as a extraplanetary injection stage for very small unmanned probes. We are just continuing to adjust this orbit without the maneuver node to bring these to bring this encounter as close as possible. Though with an asteroid, a 70 kilometer encounter is actually quite close. We're going to set the alarm to give us plenty of warning before we get there. We don't want to miss our intercept and not have enough time to slow down when we're going past the asteroid, because it's going to take quite a few meters per second to actually get us caught up with the asteroid. You'll see here we're going to switch our nav ball into target mode. Here I'm just visually looking for the asteroid now. It should be almost directly behind us, but I don't see it yet. As you can see on the nav ball, we're pointed almost perfectly away from the asteroid. I've caught on to the fact that it's somewhere behind us, but I don't think we're close enough yet to get the green blip on our screen. Trying to bring us a little bit closer so that it actually shows up and we can spy it visually. Coming up on our alarm here. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel the alarm. We're close enough now. Alright, so switching into target mode, you can see we've got, it looks like, how many meters per second is that to intercept? Like 377, I think? 177? I cannot read that in this preview window. Some number of meters per second required to intercept, so we're going to make that burn here when the asteroid is at its closest approach. Kind of just eyeballing this since we don't have a maneuver node set up, and I've got to, at this point in the flight I had a decent idea of how long a burn would take with this nuclear engine. Fast forwarding it anyway. Alright, once we cancel out our relative velocity, we're just going to move. So you can see our orbits pretty much matches the asteroid now. We're just going to bring ourselves in a little bit closer. The reason I did this particular design for the HOC mission is it was relatively close to when our friends in Europe had landed filet on the comet, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name of, but the Rosetta mission. This had just happened when I recorded this, so I was like, oh, I want to do something similar. So like, okay, so I don't have harpoons, but I have the grabbing claw. And I can just drop a science lander on an asteroid. So let's try that. For bonus points, I was just going to try and, like, shove the docking port with the claw towards the asteroid, but we wound up just docking the entire thing to it. I wasn't sure that the claw would attach without you being in direct control. But one traditional asteroid intercept is more than enough for this mission, so we're coming in close now, within 10 kilometers, 6 kilometers there. within 5 kilometers. Now the asteroid's named TVZ597. We are definitely going to have to change that to something easier to remember. Within 3 kilometers. Should switch into meters here soon. 2 kilometers. Space whales singing excitedly as we approach this asteroid. And it's not quite as big as I was expecting. Our contract requires us to do this in orbit on a Class D asteroid, and I thought I'd selected a Class D asteroid, but this looks a little small and I'm starting to get worried. Just over 700 meters away, and we're killing our relative velocities here as we go in for our final approach maneuver. Nice slow burn as we try to bring our velocities closer together. And there we are. We have pretty much killed our relative velocity to this asteroid, so we are just working on bringing ourselves closer together now. Less than a kilometer apart. We have matched orbits, and I'm just frankly amazed that the nuclear rocket lasted this long. I was really expecting to have to approach this asteroid with nothing but the ion drive and our RCS thrusters. So the fact that we still have the nuclear engine is pretty impressive, but it also means that we're not going to be quite as maneuverable around the asteroid itself. So we're just going to pretty much go straight in and clamp onto the asteroid here. Asteroid TVZ597. Really got to come up with something better for that. And you can get a better look at the spacecraft itself. You can see there are parachutes on it for potentially recovering it back on Kerbin. We have quite a number of batteries between the forward compartment and the booster stage there. And of course there's several of our science experiments around the core. Uh-oh. If you happen to be reading the science, it says Type C asteroid. Our contract is for a Type D asteroid. So I spent all this time picking an asteroid, getting us there, designing this experiment, and it's not even the right size. Or is it? So it says Type C asteroid, and our contract says Type D asteroid. But if you've seen the next episode, you'll know the contract goes away. So we're luckily going to go ahead and continue with the experiments anyway. At the very least, we're going to get a bunch of science out of this mission regardless. Though at this point I am planning to, we are planning to recover just the science off of this and leave the spacecraft in orbit, because I am assuming I'm going to have to go catch a Class D asteroid anyway. Still can't believe this is a Type C. All that effort and somehow I grabbed the wrong asteroid. So anyway, here we are coming in for the grapple. Hooks are in, and we've got it. Nice big rock. So let's go ahead and rename the asteroid. Delete that awful, awful name. We're going to call this the HOC mission. We grappled the wrong asteroid. Seems appropriate. So despite the fact that HOC's project fell through, we are going to forever, at least in this version of the game, have an asteroid bearing his name in the skies above Kerbin. Well, it actually leaves Kerbin pretty soon after this, but we could always go and bring it back if we need to. Though I guess that will be our thing. If HOC ever winds up watching this, you let me know where you want your asteroid, and I will do my best to get it there. Don't think he's going to be watching this, but you know, whatever. Anyway, doing the rest of our science experiments, we're unfolding our Magic Mary Poppins magnetometer and getting data out of that. Trying to maneuver the camera around here. With the booster still attached, our center of mass is significantly away from the actual scientific instruments, as well as the asteroid. Makes that more complicated as well. working on our solar collectors. Ironically, they're pointed away from the sun, so I don't know how well that works. And it just flat out didn't work while we were connected to the asteroid. So here we are rotating the entire spacecraft around to point the solar collectors actually at the sun. And there we go, we get the science just for being near the asteroid, but not grappled to it, which is an interesting distinction in this case. So there seem to be two different biomes here technically. There's grappled to the asteroid, and then there's just close to the asteroid, which is rather interesting, I think. Since we're still technically in Kerbin's sphere of influence, I don't know what the limit on how close to the asteroid you have to be before it counts that as a separate biome. And it's kind of neat that they can actually put in a moving biome in the game. That's very encouraging for future interesting developments. Like, they could easily add comets and such to the game in the future, which I think there is a couple mods that do, but they always still use the actual asteroid objects. So working on some of our other experiments, firing a laser, accidentally hit our own docking clamp, but that's okay, we still get the science from it. And firing the laser again, because for some reason you can just fire the laser without doing science, which seems reasonable. I would fire many lasers. Decent mix of sciences there. Again, Type C asteroid according to the science experiments. And we're also going to run this little experiment, the imaging system, which it opens up and it's just full of tiny cameras, which is not quite what I was expecting, but I guess it makes sense given what the experiment is. I would have put it pointing a little bit better towards the asteroid had I realized it was just full of cameras. I guess that probably works. It probably gets a decent image back. Looks very cool anyway. We'll see that in a future episode. Well, in the very next episode. It is on our Duna spacecraft. We have one of those. So just checking to make sure I've got all the science that I can possibly get out of here. We've unclamped from the asteroid, getting some science disconnected from it again. It's interesting that certain objects have to be a little bit further away and others have to be connected. Oh well. Hooking back onto the asteroid one more time. I think that's going to do it for our science here. I'm kind of wishing I'd brought a Kerbal just to get some extra science there, but I kind of like unmanned missions. They're fun. They're different, and you don't have to worry about getting them home in one piece usually. In this case, it's the only way we're going to get most of the stuff back. So, as you can see, we're leaving the claw and a docking port behind just in case we come back out here again with another ship. That might come in handy. That will probably also be our attachment point should we ever bring out some kind of booster in attempt to move this rocket. Move this rock. It's not a rocket yet. It'll become a rocket if we try and move it. A rock rocket. Rock rocket. Just checking on our science experiments, making sure we've got one of everything. Firing the laser one more time. That felt good. And can't collect any data off that, but, you know, it was worth a shot, you know? A literal shot in this case. A shot of a laser. I felt I had to at least hit the asteroid once, you know, and now that we had the claw detached, it should have had enough clearance to actually hit the thing. So checking on our orbit, we are going to adjust things to bring us back down towards Kerbin. And we just want to skim the upper atmosphere. We don't want to re-enter just yet, because as far as we know, we are going to need to attach to another asteroid. So we're going to leave this thing in orbit and potentially pick it up with a science station later to refurbish the experiments. Also, it still has a full complement of xenon fuel, so we've got the whole ion stage that we just haven't used whatsoever. So this thing has a lot of delta V left in it, and may come in handy in the future. And closing the science bay. So, thermometer was completely useless on this entire mission. But we're leaving our asteroid behind. Oh, nope, still checking more scientific instruments. Okay, I think we're going through now and checking to see if there's anything we can transmit home for full value. Yes, so we are going to go ahead and send the laser data home. That transmits for full value. which is important because I think that was designed to be a rover sort of utility, the kind of thing you'd land on Duna and not have to worry about getting back. Same thing with the broad spectrum imaging. Seems to be designed for unmanned probes. Which is good. That gives you a kind of unmanned counterpart to the crew report and the EVA reports that get you full value if you can transmit them home. Alright, so just fast forwarding through our maneuver here as we kill our, bring our orbit down. And there we go, burn complete. Still haven't killed all the fuel in our nuclear tug, but we are going to have to, we are going to need to bring our orbit down onto the equatorial plane. Because we're just going to send up another ship to grab this and get the science out of it. And in order to do that, we're just literally going to kill all of our orbital velocity here. Since we are orbiting retrograde, we have to turn our orbit around, and it's easier to just stop entirely in orbit and then hit the gas going in the opposite direction. So we just effectively neutralized our orbit, so we were pretty much falling straight back down towards Kerbin, and then we boosted ourselves right back into orbit in the direction we needed to go. And promptly ran out of fuel. So we are going to have to switch over to the ion engine, which means we're going to be fast forwarding a lot through this next maneuver. I think it started? Yes, the engine is definitely running. It's just not running much. Well, that's... I could have sworn it had some kind of effect with it now, but I guess not. Anyway, so fast forwarding through, it's 4x time acceleration in-game, and 4x time acceleration on my post-processing. So that was a full 16 times acceleration for that maneuver, and it still took a decent amount of time. In fact, I don't think it's over. I think we're still... Yeah, because we're just now bringing our periapsis out of Kerbin itself. Looks like it's just below the cloud layer. And there it is. Okay, so we're just going to bring that up to just above the atmosphere. Now that we have entered the same orbiting plane as the moon and that unnamed other spacecraft that you can see orbiting there, we will do the rest of the encounter with the other spacecraft. So we want to save as much fuel as possible in our HOC spacecraft. Not that we really need to, but xenon gas being one of the easier things to bring up to a spacecraft if necessary. So here we are switching to this other spacecraft we have orbited off camera. This is just a basic orbiter. It's actually a clone of the Minmus Again and Moon Again spacecraft, so you might see its name somewhere. It's just out here for the sole purpose of picking up our HOC mission and all the science attached. So we're going to show the encounter here as we bring this rocket closer to that one. Still got a skipper engine attached to that. Decent little upper stage, not too bad, but nothing particularly efficient. As you can see, it certainly doesn't have enough fuel to have gotten into a moon encounter without going into the orbiter's own fuel supply. There we are, and bringing us to a matching velocity with the high orbit catcher. The skipper pretty much running out of fuel for that, so we are going to have to fire up the Poodle. So this took a little bit more time than I expected it to, so we're not quite as close to the HOC as we could have been. And I think that will do it. Yes, there we go. We have matched velocities with our target spacecraft, just 2 kilometers away. We're going to go ahead and bring these two together. spin our camera around so we can dock with this thing. We could just EVA a Kerbal and extract all the science, but it has a docking port, so we might as well link the two together just to make absolutely sure neither of them can float away. I don't know, it seems wrong to bring two spacecraft that close together and not dock them, you know? I mean, you can dock them. It's more fun. It's much more fun. Having a little trouble using my engine for the brake there. Had to swivel back around and fire the engine again. Alright, so switching to the RCS thrusters, controlling from the docking port. Again, awesome that they have lights on them now, even though I don't appear to be using them. Ah, there's the spacecraft. You can see it lit up in my headlights now. Pulling underneath it and bringing the ship around, because I did not come in on a direct docking maneuver. Had to just kind of get close and maneuver around. There's the spacecraft, using the circle of our docking lamps to line up with the port. And connected. Well, bouncing around. There we are. A little bit of a phantom spin there, but we linked up. That's the important part. So we're going to go ahead and deactivate the lights on our docking clamps because I don't know why. Just makes sense, I guess. Bring our Kerbals on EVA. We're just going to go ahead and remove all the science here. But again, we are going to leave this in orbit, and in fact you can see in episode 8 it is still up in orbit, and I just kind of ignored it through the episode, and it's like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, so I'm not going to mention it. I'm sure you could definitely have noticed that the contract was missing. Nice little silhouette there against the bright star Kerbal. So we're just logging our different data sets here. Oh, in fact, we were able to get some more data out of the imaging sensor, since we're in orbit over Kerbin now, and we already transmitted the asteroid observations. Extracting our solar particles, and it seems to be allowing us to run another solar experiment as well, so we're going to go ahead and grab that. That's going to save us a science trip in the future at some point, probably. I believe this is Filmy Kerbin, who's got one of the best names in the game. He's so filmy. Just covered in film. No, that was Alan Kerbin. Okay. No, Phil is in the command seat. Okay. Alright, so disconnecting from the spacecraft, we're going to leave it in orbit, doing its fancy science things. Might repurpose that for a future mission, hopefully. This is not the last we have seen of the HOC spacecraft. But in the meantime, it is time to bring this down, and there we go, straight into the deorbit burn. Since we matched our the HOC's velocity, we're actually coming in really fast, so that's why this burning is so spectacular today for our re-entry. And doesn't look like we're going to hit dry land, so we're going to jettison the service module and just land on parachutes alone. I think I'm going to reinstall the trajectories mod so I can more carefully plot out my landings, because I feel like I'm losing a bunch of money every time I jettison a service module instead of touching down on those landing legs that I waste money attaching to every single one of these out of the hope that I can possibly land with them. And there go the parachutes. Fast-forwarding down to the ground. Waiting for the kasploosh of the service module. And, well, it's coming up soon. Anyway, once that touches down, that's going to be any second now, our parachutes should deploy right there. Okay. And there's the service module hitting. So that's going to do it for this mission. Again, sorry this came out of order. This was supposed to be a submission for HOC Gaming's Flying Blind series, but he did a couple of test episodes, and apparently it didn't work out. So we get this one ourselves. And that's going to do it for this mission. Pay close attention to the final frame before I cut off the recording, because turns out the contract actually did complete. So we're not going to have to do this again. But I will see you all next time.